welcome to Frontline Freedom. My name is Keith Komar. I am your host today. On our show today, we have Joseph Patterson. He is a chartered professional accountant, social entrepreneur, good governance advocate, and is the president and founder of the United Independence Congress, which is a political party in Jamaica. Mr. Patterson is also the founder and president of YESJamaica. It's a foundation that mentors and funds young entrepreneurs in Jamaica. He is currently a UIC candidate for Member of Parliament in Northeast St. Elizabeth. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thank you very much. I'm just getting a crazy call here. Let me just turn this down. But thank you so much for having me, Keith. And it's a pleasure to be on your show. It's the first time I'll be doing anything like this in Canada. Really thanks to you and your Canadian audience for having me.
It's a small audience, but we're hoping to grow that. And as you understand, libertarianism is it's not the frontline thing right now. Everybody seems to be enamored with socialism, so and we're the opposite end of that. So it's kind of like we're
absolutely
we're standing on the other side, trying to bring some intelligent conversation to the table, because I really think that right now what you see in politics is a lot of people putting out the same flavor of ice cream. They have different colors, but it all tastes the same. It's all this vanilla, and we like
absolutely.
We like to spice
whether it's the Greens talking about the Green New Deal or anything like that, or it's the Liberals talking about how they want to socialize childcare or healthcare, or it's even conservatives, are afraid to tell people the truth and are afraid to educate the public on the importance of protecting our individual liberty. And so it falls to us, you might say on the fringes, to educate, inform, and seek to get all of mankind to be aware of the dangers of giving up your individual liberty for any form of security that you might think you will get in return.
Exactly. And so who would have thought, if you asked our forefathers 150 years ago who founded Canada and recently founded the United States, that freedom would be a fringe topic? I think they would be crazy.
I mean, even if you speak, from my context as a Jamaican, as you know, Jamaica is a former colony of the British. And the big fight for us here in Jamaica was to come out of slavery, right? Africans who were extracted from Africa were brought to Jamaica as slave, or so the story goes. And they've been in slavery for almost 400 years. And today, when I talk to my fellow Jamaicans about freedom, they actually think they're free with the government controlling so many aspects of their lives, the government controlling the money supply, the government controlling interest rate, the government setting prices in the market, the government regulating away their lives, deciding who and what they can have for healthcare, who will be allowed to sell goods and services, who will be given a free pass to import and who will not be allowed to import. So I have to be educated in that. No, you're not, just because you can choose who your master is doesn't mean you're free.
That's right. You're at 100%. And so in Canada, we have a huge problem with that, because we identify as one of the freest nations in the world, and yet we're one of the highest regulated populations here in Canada. You can't really do anything without a government certificate, a license, or some type of approval. So
exactly,
trying to educate people to the fact that it's not freedom to be able to choose your master.
Exactly.
Freedom is choosing your own destiny and being able to make your own life the way you want to see it. And
absolutely,
it's very hard conversation, especially in our current environment right now, with the fear of the virus going around.
Yes.
Everybody is mandatory masks, mandatory vaccines, or the new conversation is, well, we're not going to make the vaccine mandatory, but you just won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to go to the public stores, or you won't be able to work because you're a risk to the population. So by saying it's not mandatory and then putting all of these restrictions,
it's mandatory. It's saying if you want to travel, you must take the vaccine. So that's mandatory. If you want to go to work, you must take the vaccine. So that's mandatory. If you want to walk in public spaces, you must, you
So,
know, so this is all semantics, Keith. It's just semantics, but the reality is it's mandates, it's dictatorship, it's us giving up, giving away, and allowing government and those behind them to take away our rights and freedom.
that's right. And they should be paramount. Your rights and freedoms should be paramount. And originally, when we started democracy, when we founded this country, the government's role was supposed to protect those rights and freedoms. It wasn't to tell us how to live, or to live our lives for us. It was to protect those rights and freedoms that were supposed to be inalienable, inviolable, and from God, if you will, that man has these God-given rights to exist and provide for his family and live as he chooses. And
Absolutely.
the conversation has shifted now.
Once you start with the wrong premise, though, and I think in almost every country in the world, except for in modern history, the US, they started with the wrong premise. And the premise is that government has this great responsibility to, based on a democracy where the majority vote, to decide what's best for all of us. And that's the wrong premise.
Sure.
The basis for government is to protect your life, liberty, and property. Protect each of us from each of us, and to protect the collective from outside forces who might want to invade your country. That's the essence of government. The moment we move away and make government like some kind of a charity where the rest of us are members and we vote what charitable activity this government is going to do in general, and then give over our rights to a small subset of society to then decide what charitable activity we're going to do, what kind of healthcare we're going to provide for these subjects of ours, what kind of education are we going to provide for these subjects of ours, what kind of economy will we permit for these subjects. You see, we've lost the real purpose of government, and the moment you lose that purpose, and then you teach children the wrong purpose of government, and you educate society on the wrong purpose of government, eventually the people lose sight of what is this? Is it supposed to give us daycare? Is it supposed to give us healthcare? Is it supposed to give us free food? Is it supposed to give us housing? So we have lost the meaning of government. Government is not there to provide for our private wants and needs. That's for each of us to work for and provide for ourselves. Government is there to protect me from you and you from me, so I cannot violently take your life or take away your freedom, that is enslave you, or take away your property, that is steal from you. Government is supposed to apply objective laws so that I can go about my lawful business and you can go about yours, knowing that you're protected from me being able to do that. And subset of that, government is to enforce contracts. So if you and I enter into a contract, as long as it was entered into mutually, voluntarily, you didn't force me, I didn't force you, we both agree to enter into this contract, then government says you need to honor your contract to each other. And so there's a legal system to mitigate that and ensure that contracts are generally honored. Outside of that, I take care of my own life. You take care of your own life. I am not responsible for your food and clothing and shelter and education and healthcare. You're not responsible for mine. However, we're free to help each other voluntarily. So if you get sick and I want to chip in and help with your medical bills, that's fine. That's my right to do if I wish to the extent that I want to. Yes. And same for you. But now we have government being given a mandate by simply a vote of the mob, whichever majority group you can cobble together to vote and say, we vote to violate the rights of other citizens. That's immoral, that's illegal, that's not justifiable, and that's what we're trying to get rid of.
Yes, and that's the fight that we have right now, Joseph, is
yes,
to bring back the common sense approach to this. And I was going to say that democracy, if you look at it from an outside standpoint, it's like two wolves and a hen in a hut trying to vote over who's going to be for dinner.
Exactly. It's a foregone conclusion. So everybody's going to vote. Everybody loves free, right? If you go to a supermarket and they said, ladies and gentlemen, in aisle number 2, we have free cornflakes available. Take as many as you want. all the other aisles would be quickly empty. We'd all run over there to get our free cornflakes, generally speaking, unless you really don't like cornflakes, which would be a minority. Now, now if it just so happened that they said, anybody you see holding a box of cornflakes, you can take it. Now you create a serious problem, right? Because you've made it legal to steal from another person. But basically, if you say, vote, let's have a vote. Who would like to vote for free something? We want free healthcare. You're going to get a majority voting for free healthcare. The question that you didn't ask is, who's going to pay for it?
That's right. And so what people miss in this whole conversation is that doctors need to be paid for their services. We don't expect you to work for free, so they have to be paid. Hospitals have to be maintained. You have to pay the electricity. There has to be, there's infrastructure to all this. There's medicines at the back end of this. We're talking about free pharmacare in Canada right now too, which is ridiculous because you're just adding more onto the pile of what the burden of the taxpayer is. And what people also don't understand is a lot of these problems have been created by government in the first place. When my dad first came to Canada, he escaped communism in 52. He left Yugoslavia and he went into Austria and he came to Canada. He got here in 56 and he was paid as a bricklayer back in that time very good money. It was $2.25 an hour, and so he was making about $4,000 a year. But his house was only $4,500 and his car was only $1,200. So he was making 80% of his debt load in a year. Now, through the inflation of the currency, I'm a bricklayer. I make $40 an hour, great money in Canada. So I make about $80,000, $85,000 a year, but my house is $600,000 and the car is $50,000. I'm only making 13, 14% of my debt load in a year. And this is what people are missing, is they don't understand that the problem was created by government in the first place, and now you're asking government to raise minimum wage and to supplement your lack of funding for these things, and you're asking the person who broke it to fix it in the first place. And really, all you have to do is get them out of the way, and the problem solves itself. Because if you had a solid free market currency and you had people compete, they'd back it, and you wouldn't trust the currency that didn't have gold in the bank, and you would invest in the one that did. The ones that weren't doing it would fail like every other industry. The ones that were backing it would succeed. You'd have confidence in that money, and you'd also have value in it. And then
absolutely,
you could have the one income family again, and you could have all of these things that we were based on. So they miss the mark right off the bat because they don't understand what the problem is.
And you see, Keith, that's the problem, right? We are not educated in economics, real economics. We're not educated in the monetary system. We don't know how the monetary system works. So when voters go to the poll to vote, they're voting without having a clue what they're voting for. Right. So if you vote for more free stuff and you have no idea where the money is coming from, you end up with what we have, which is inflation, because government is using deficit spending to exist, which means simply stealing from you. They're either printing more money, as the US gets to do because it's the reserve currency, or they're borrowing more money at interest, as Canada and Jamaica does, and pumping these monies into the economy, diluting your earnings, which is why you go from having 80% of your debt load in your income to 13% as it is today. And in the long result of that is you're working harder for less. So you're working harder for less and you're struggling. And the more you struggle, the politicians come to you and lie to you and tell you that they can fix it by doing more of the same. We can fix it by giving you more free education, more free healthcare, more affordable housing. And how do they do that? They simply borrow more, create more government programs that creates waste and mismanagement and corruption, which then filters into the economy, dilutes your income, makes you poorer just the same, and then they make you more promises. And now you have 3 or 4 parties in Canada, 2 parties in Jamaica, well, 3 now, in addition to ourselves, the UIC, 3 of them fighting for who can tell you the most lies to encourage you to vote for more destruction of your economy, more destruction of your well-being. The UIC here in Jamaica is very focused on helping people to understand that the purpose of government is to protect your life, your liberty, and your property, and your responsibility is to work and earn and pay for what you want, not to expect the government to, on your behalf, tax others to give you a benefit, but rather the benefit that we all pay taxes for is a safe environment, a clean environment, an orderly environment, one where we respect contracts, we respect the life, the liberty and freedom of others, and we ensure that the government cannot do deficit spending. And if
Yes.
they can't do deficit spending, then your the inflation will be contained to only natural inflation, where something is scarce by nature, like a hurricane or whatever blow out a crop or whatever. But basically, you no longer have runaway inflation or deflation. You no longer have a situation where the government is able to manipulate markets, be a gatekeeper, giving some industries special privileges and special tax breaks, and like we're doing in Jamaica, giving the Chinese special tax breaks, becoming more indebted to them, gradually losing important assets around our country because we are giving up these rights to get temporary cash inflows that eventually will dissipate in the economy, devalue the value of the money of those who are working hard, and in the end we all get taxed more to pay for this.
That's right. And it's marketed as, a delicious ice cream, but really it's just a pile of dog poop. And
Absolutely.
they put a nice wrapper on it and they sell it to you with all these fancy dreams and promises. So it's unfortunate that people don't understand that. And it is our job as libertarians to bring that to light.
And it's a big battle because we don't have the money to pay for the airtime, right? Every time you turn on the radio or television, those who are selling the dog poop have the microphone.
That's right.
They have the most money for the most ads for the big president. Every time the prime minister in Jamaica does something bad, he gets to go on television and tell you how good it is, free of charge.
Same here, and they use our tax dollars against us in advertising and propaganda.
Exactly.
Our radio right now is just filled with the province
propaganda.
Talking about we be safe, social distance, put on your mask, do all these wonderful things. And I'm not saying that as responsible human beings we shouldn't mitigate the spread of this. Wash your hands, be careful. It's like you do every flu season. Wash your hands. Don't pick
every day. Every day you should be careful about your health. Why is it just now that we just discovered we need to wash our hands? Every day we need to wash our hands. Every day we need to be hygienic. Every day we need to be aware of our surroundings and how and what we're engaging in. And in the good old days, when a person gets the flu, they don't show up to work. They stay home. And we encourage that in the office. We encourage that.
That's another problem that we have today, is that people don't have enough of an income to survive and they have no savings. They're 2 weeks away from insolvency. So they get a little bit of a cough or a little bit of a sneeze, and then they immediately go, well, I can't miss work. So they go to work and they try to hide it and they try to mask it. And so these are all, and again, every single one of these problems that we're presenting are government problems. They've been created. And now we have to suffer the consequences of it. And asking government to solve that is not going to do that. And what I really wanted to touch on today was your YESJamaica that you're doing, because to me that is the ultimate in libertarianism right there. It's not a government solution, it is a private solution. You're helping out your neighbors. You're using your funds to fund entrepreneurs, and you're picking people up by their bootstraps, and you're allowing them to either succeed or fail on their own merits, which it is ultimate libertarianism right there. And so I wanted you to touch on that a little bit. Tell me how you started and where that comes from.
So it was it started in high school right after we graduated from high school in 1990. A bunch of us got together and we're like, okay, so now we're finished high school, we're going off to college, doing whatever. How do we continue to serve? Because we used to be a part of what's called the Key Club, which is a part of the Kiwanis organization. And so we said, what are we going to do now? We're no longer in school. We still want to help people. How do we do this? And then we created the Youth Enterprise Society as kids. We were kids. The Youth Enterprise Society. And our mandate was to be as industrious as we can and to help other young people to become industrious as well. So I was a libertarian without knowing it, right? I didn't believe in government as the end. I believed in us as young people being creative, productive. And so in any event, we all disbanded over time and go off to college. And so in 2016, when I ran for office for the first time here in Jamaica as a member of parliament, and I lost that election. And then I was like, what can I do to help young people? We have a very high unemployment rate here in Jamaica, young people over 30%. And I was like, what can we do to make, and then I remembered what we were trying to do in high school. So I got up my wife and a bunch of people and said, why don't we create an enterprise that helps young people to not just sit at home waiting for a job that's probably never going to come? How can we help them to think outside that box and become job creators themselves? And so we started a youth enterprise society called YESJamaica, registered, became a charity, and we started to raise money for young entrepreneurs. So a person who wants to be a plumber, an electrician, or set up a shop, or write code for building softwares, or building up an export product that they can export to other countries, but don't know where to start properly and how to do it. And so we got involved mentoring these young people and raising funds for their particular enterprises, and just set them off. We teach them, we use a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad series by Robert Kiyosaki to give them a really good general understanding of how to think. Because in our school system, which is government run, they teach children to become employees. They teach children to how to seek a job. They don't teach them to think,
No.
to reason, to analyze. And I have nothing against getting a job. That's fine. But you need to know that a job, the be all, end all. You need to be aware of the governance of your country, which is what we teach in YES as well. Be aware of the governance system. How does this thing work? How does taxes work? What's the purpose of taxation? What is good governance? How do you get proper checks and balances? What's the relation of the public sector to the private sector? Many of them didn't realize that they're a part of the private sector. They thought the private sector was something out there. I said, no, every citizen is a member of the private sector. Yeah. You are, as a private citizen, you must engage in trading value for value with other people. So you have to build yourself up. You have to learn, acquire skills, and find something of value that other people want, so you can trade that with them for the value that they have that you need. As opposed to, in Jamaica, a person will say, nobody's given me a job. No, nobody has any responsibility to give you a job. We teach them. What is theirs, you have a responsibility to say to the rest of the world, here is what I can give you in exchange for values that you have. So seek out and learn how to trade value. And this was new to them. This is like a completely different way of thinking. It's like Mars when we share this with them, right? They're like, whoa. And so that's how we have been changing lives and changing minds, helping young people 15, 16, 17, 18, all the way up to 35 to adjust their thinking and become creators of products and services that are of value to others, and never to think that anyone owes them anything. No one owes you anything but to respect your life, your liberty, and your property. You do not have a claim on anybody else's property. Nobody should give you anything, but you have the right and the freedom, and should have the right and the freedom, to produce and sell to others, and to use the funds you've earned to buy from others. And that's what we teach our young people here.
What a wonderful message. It comes down to the conversation that the left has right now with equity and outcome versus equity and opportunity. I believe in equity and opportunity. I think everybody has the right to an equal opportunity to succeed, but that comes from effort and hard work too. You know, liberty is freedom, but it's responsibility as well.
Absolutely.
Combined, if you want a true liberty, you have to be free, but you also have to be responsible to earn that. And equity and outcome is a fallacy, because outcome is determined on effort and you know what you put into it. So even if we were to take everything in the world and split it up equally tomorrow between 7 billion people, someone's going to buy a car, another guy's going to invest it, another guy's going to go and, you know, he's going to go on a rampage and get drunk and high and waste it, and then the very next day we're no longer equal in outcome. So
exactly,
the only way to do that is to reset the clock every night. And what purpose would that be?
Yeah,
so,
and equity and outcome is really a form of theft, because for you to create equity and outcome, you have to take away from somebody else who has created more by force.
Yes.
You have to take from him by force to give to somebody else who have made less. So in my family, my mom has four of us, four children. Initially, she only had three of us when she was a single mother. She got married later in life and had a fourth child in her old age. So we have a younger sister. So let's talk about the three of us first, the older ones. Three of us, she's a single mother, a poor single mother, no father in the picture. She had to do all she could. And she did her best to care for all three of us to the best of her ability. My older brother was always getting into trouble. He has great potential, but always gets into trouble. He just never, settle down and pay attention and work hard the way she wanted him to. And so he didn't do very well in school. My sister, on the other hand, sweet, adorable, darling. She was like my second mother. But she probably had a bit of a learning disability. She just didn't learn as fast or whatever. For me, on the other hand, after a slow start, I flew through the gate. Everything became unstoppable, scholarships, starting small businesses very young, successfully, borrowing money from the bank, investing, trading on the stock exchange, making enough money to help other children to get through college, all of that. Now, should it be that somebody should come over and say, well, it's unfair, Joseph, you should not have been able to acquire all that you do. I'm going to, without your permission, I'm going to dip into all that you have done and take out 2/3 of it and give 1/3 to your brother and 1/3 to your sister. And you're only going to get to keep 1/3 because it's unfair for you to be more productive and more successful in building financial reserves than your sibling. That's unfair. Now, to me, that is criminal.
Sure.
That is immoral. Now, it's okay for me and my sister and brother to talk. And if we want to share, like my brother turned out in the end to be an excellent air-conditioned HVAC technician. Really cool. Very good. So if I need something done on my house that requires his skills, instead of me hiring somebody else, I am free to hire my brother and share my wealth with him in that regard. Now, my sister, she ended up, in the end, turning things around, and she became a medical professional in the radiology area. She understands all that wonderful stuff. Now, my mom, who is older now, needs to be cared for. And my brother and I can say, well, my sister is smarter than the two of us when it comes on to taking care of mom. Why don't we both give our sister some of our financial resources and put her in a position to take care of her mom? No, that's us making that decision, not a third party, not a government coming and mandating what to do with my income or my brother's income or her time.
That's right. And that's voluntarism at its finest, and that's the way the world should work. What happens with government, and I think people don't see this very often, is when you give them the mandate to do these things, to set up the economy, or to meddle in our lives, what happens is they end up picking winners and losers.
Yes.
They don't have anything vested in it themselves. So what they do is look to just like you would do, they look to their friend. Who is going to benefit from this edict that I'm about to pass?
Mm-hmm.
Friend gets the benefit of the edict, a little bit of cash slides back the other way. And that's where we end up with this corporatocracy that we live in today.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
What happens is people have this fallacy that that's what capitalism is. That is not capitalism. Capitalism is the voluntary trade between you and your brother. When he comes in and does it back and you pay him, that's capitalism. Mm-hmm. Corporatism is not that. It's actually what that is fascism. It's what Hitler and the Germans did. Is if you want to build trucks in Germany, I want 50,000 for my army, and I'll give Ford the contract. He's a friend of mine, but nobody else can sell cars because Henry Ford is doing it, and they'll regulate everybody out of the business. We just saw that when they legalized cannabis in Canada. Mm-hmm. It became legal, but Health Canada set up all these regulations that it would take $11 million to actually get into the industry. And who got the license? Well, Chuck Rafisi, he was the former CFO of the Liberal Party. And, Julian Fantino, who's a Liberal, he's an ex-police chief in York Region in Toronto. He got the license to do this. So it becomes this friend and favors. And that is not what capitalism is. And I urge people to understand that capitalism is probably the best thing that ever happened in this world. Is when we decided that it was going to be a voluntary deal between you and me, it was the best thing that ever happened. You got the
Absolutely.
got everybody out of the way, and it just became between you and me. And that corporatism is not what we espouse. We don't.
Corporatism is socialism gone bad,
Yes.
right? The purpose of socialism, the intent of socialism, is for the community to own all things in common. Communism, right? Now, that's not practical. It's not feasible, and it always fails. Now, when you have a socialist system, those with the money, the corporations, the big corporations and the very rich, they're wise. If you're going to have a socialist system, they need to make sure they get on top of this thing and manage it to benefit them. Because if they leave socialism to run its ordinary course, it will simply implode, right? You will simply have government trying its best. If in a real socialist government where you have holy men of God, pious men who have no vested interest in getting into corruption, they're holy men, they're very holy. So what would they do? They would simply spend every waking day trying to redistribute wealth. Oh, Joseph has too much. Let's take some from him. Let's give it to Mary. Oh, Mary has too much now. Let's take some from her. Let's give it to John. Now, to do that, it's a massive undertaking. So you have to set up huge government bureaucracy and hire tons of people to spy on each other, and then try to mandate what should be produced by who, which Russia found out they couldn't do. The USSR, they imploded onto that structure trying to do this, right? Now, what happens in the net result of all of this eventually is that the rich, if they're smart enough, which they are, they try to buy the political parties, own the politicians, and have them work for them. So the politician goes out and sells a socialist message while doing exactly what you say, implement corporate socialism.
Yes.
Okay? And then in the long and short of it, eventually the people are suffering, and then they give it the name. They don't call it corporate socialism or socialism. They simply say it's capitalism that's failing.
Yes.
And people believe that capitalism is failing because they have no idea what capitalism is. What is capitalism? It's very simple. Capitalism says you trade value for value with each other, and the government never gets involved except to prosecute anyone who tries to use force or fraud to get their way. But the government doesn't pick winners or losers. It doesn't try to give one industry preference over another. It doesn't create regulations and licensing schemes that locks out small businesses and locks out ordinary individuals and gives special access through these structured regulations, which is supposed to help us, to the big businesses and big corporate entities. But instead, it gets out of the way and allow us to compete freely and fairly. Somebody will say, but that's not free and fair. How are we going to compete with the very rich? We've been doing that for years. Every year, big successful companies fail and small ideas become big. Every single year that's happening. If government gets out of the way, you'll only have more of that happening. You'll have companies that become big and powerful. And if they do not become more good at managing the relationship with the customer and giving the customer what they want, some smaller entities will come along and find a better way to do it, a kinder way to do it, a more appreciated way to do it, and customers will move from here to here. And that's fine. That's okay. It's okay for us to trade. It's okay for us to trade value for value. And if we allow that to happen, we would have not a utopia, just a more perfect world.
That's right. There is no libertopia out there. Let's clear that up, because people are people, and there's going to be good and bad in everything we do. But what a libertarian message does provide for everybody is the best opportunity to succeed from a place of having nothing. It allows you to take your intelligence and your ability to work hard and fix yourself and change that message for yourself, and come out into the world and be a better person and provide value to other people, and then reap the benefits of that.
Yeah. One of the questions, Keith, that people will ask you is, well, what about the poor? Who is going to help the poor? What about the sick? Who is going to help the sick? I ask them, who is helping them today? with all the socialism that we've put in place, with all the massive amounts of taxes we've paid into, I mean, in Canada, I've lived in Canada for years, right? So I know, I mean, every time I get a raise in pay, the government gets a raise in taxes, right? And they get far more. They keep, so right now, with all the money we give government, what do we get? More wars, more spying on citizens, more social problems in society. So the social problems get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the wars get more terrible, and terrorism. So, because we're financing it, right? It's our taxes that's financing all these wars for oil, right? To give big corporation a chance to have conglomerates or to have monopolies. They're using our taxes to do that, or to implement some new immoral scheme that the government thinks should be implemented, or to carry out some new charitable activity that we may not agree with, but the government decides it should be funded. Now, if you stop all of that madness and give us all back our income, we will choose the charities we wish to fund. And I can tell you, none of us will be choosing to fund wars for big companies to take over oil fields in Iraq or anywhere. So we're going to fund our churches. We're going to fund our civic organizations that we really like, we want to help the dogs, we want to help the dolphins, fine. But we will fund those directly, and those governance structures will take care of those funding. We will go to our meetings and hold accountable in our different groups. But the government now will become focused on really protecting our rights. And if our rights are protected, then we're free. We're more secure to invest, to create, to invent, and to produce, and to expand the economy voluntarily. That's what we want.
So two points I want to put on that. In Canada right now, we spend roughly $10 billion a year on the homeless problem. Not one house has been built. Not one apartment has been looked after. There's nothing happening on the ground. It's turned into like this meetings of bureaucrats who go golfing and talk about homelessness, but they do nothing. So there's a prime example of what happens when you allow government to fix your problems. Is they take your money and they spend it wastefully and do nothing for it. Yeah. And then the next thing is you were talking about is innovation, and we hear a lot right now about ending oil. Let's get out of oil. And if we were really serious about that, the government would end regulation on hemp oil tomorrow, because you can make everything is made of plastic, and you can make a hemp plastic that's biodegradable. We have the technology, it's ready to go, but the regulations are so high in the industry that it's not economical to do so. So it sits quietly on the sidelines. So it's like this double speak. Yes, you want to end oil, but you regulated out the solution that we already have for it. So it's like this madness that we live in. They cry for more government intervention to get rid of oil, and really, if the less government intervention would end oil in so many aspects in our lives.
The best way to get rid of anything is for the consumer to vote with their dollars.
Yes.
That's the best way. If consumers no longer want to buy fossil fuel based products, for example, they no wish to drive their vehicles that use fossil, they'll go and buy electric vehicles if they want. If they, all you have to do is allow the consumer to vote with his money, and all of these problems go away. But as you just pointed out, the more we look to government, what we have are more commissions and meetings. And in Jamaica here, for example, every time there's a government problem, a new problem that we give the government to solve, they put up a new building or lease new office spaces from their buddies. And they take these old buildings owned by their buddies, right? Their political buddies, and then they use tax-based money and make it a brand new building on behalf of their buddies, but they're helping us, the poor consumers, right? And they put in air conditions and lovely architecture and furniture and lighting, and then they hire people to move paper around, and they're doing all these things all day and sucking money out of the productive economy, because now this money is not available for the small businessman to restock his business, to buy another piece of machinery, to spend time on a new design, and hire design engineers and creative engineers to produce things. So all this money that should be over here creating new, real productive jobs that will fund families who need it, and will continue the money will be spent on creating new wealth. Instead, the money is sucked into government, consumed because it's not producing anything but hot air and paper.
That's
And
right.
it's pulling electricity for the AC unit, for the lighting, for the water cooler, for the paper, for the ink, for the copiers. And it's just going on. And they create new agencies, new boards, and hire more of their friends and give them big checks from my money.
Yes.
And then they keep
Biggest
taking my
social,
money.
the
Yes,
biggest social welfare program out there, government.
absolutely. Yeah,
People
they
who do
hire.
nothing and we fund them.
Yeah, they hire. The government here is the biggest slice of our economy, and it does not. We still don't have good roads. So they're sucking. And this is Jamaica now. In Canada, at least you had good roads. You're beginning to have some problems, as you know.
Well,
But
the problem with democracy is that, you know, you're trying to win as many votes as you can. So Toronto
yes,
has decent roads, and Vancouver has decent roads, Montreal has decent roads, and the rest of the world or the rest of the country has nothing, because if you just cater to those three cities, you have 33% of the vote.
exactly, and that's all you need to win. Now, in Jamaica, we have a government in office right now that won less than 20% of the voter population and is now the government.
Unbelievable.
Less than 20% of the voting population, and they have, by the way, a super majority in the House, which means they can pass sweeping laws,
Yeah.
simply because 63% of us did not vote because we did not see anything to vote for. We're fully turned off politics altogether. So it's like, forget it. We're not voting. 63%. And this is not going to stop until the people become awake. Now, how do they become awake? The UIC, we are not funded by the large private sector. You know what the private sector here does? The large private sector companies, they both fund the two major colonial parties.
Sure.
And it's a small economy here. We have 2.9 million people in Jamaica. So it's a small country. Canada has about 30 million people. We have 2.9 million people. Very few big businesses. And those few big businesses all support the two major political parties.
At
They
the
don't
same
even hide it anymore. They don't even hide it, right?
That's what people need to understand is
Yeah,
they're paying for the left and the right because they're hedging
exactly.
their bets.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter who wins. What they do, they give them both the money and then sit back and watch and laugh and watch a good sport. It's like for them, it's a sporting activity. And the worst thing is that has become the same mentality of the people. They see politics as a sport. They don't understand how detrimental it is to their lives if it's not done right. So they enjoy the sport. Who's going to win? Who debated better? You know, who has a better platform, like sounding good? They're not digging into what does this really mean. So in the last election, one party was more popular with the private sector because they're doing all the things the private sector wants them to do. So they gave them a little bit more money than the other one. So the other one really was kind of decimated. Now, for us, the UIC, we get no money from anyone except small donations from individual giving. And from a Canadian standpoint, $10, $20, $50 per month. And that's how we're growing. And it's very difficult because, you know, it's like a software company, a new startup company, which does not have any big donors going up against, say, Apple.
Yes. I'm 100% on your page. As the leader of the Ontario Libertarian Party, I see the same thing. Our funds are limited to private donors, and you know, we do have a couple of private donors that have done pretty well and fund us, but we're limited to $1,600 per person. It's tough, and so really what we're trying to fight is the media blitz. Like, we're
Yes.
completely shut off in the minds of the media, and if we were invited to the table, I've said it so many times that if I was to sit on the debate stage with the other parties, I'd clean the floor with them, because I talk common sense. And when I do talk in debates, the mayors, when I'm done, they come up to me and they're like, "Keith, that makes a lot. You know, I love what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense, but you have no chance to win because you don't have the money to fund the media game."
Exactly.
So, and that's where we're at. I was looking at your platform, and it says that you guys want to try to install a constitutional republic.
Yes.
Jamaica. So you would, are you British parliamentary right now? Like we
Yeah.
are.
So right right now we're pretty much identical to Canada. We are under the British monarchy as a parliamentary so-called democracy. So the Queen of England, the very representation of slavery from our perspective, is head of state for Jamaica. We want to get rid of that. It costs us about minimum $250 million a year to preserve that relationship.
Yes.
Which is just amazing. Just to say it, I feel sick, right? We're paying $250 million a year minimum to keep in place the very representation of colonialism and slavery. So we want to get rid of that. We want to become a constitutional republic with an elected executive president that is an executive which is separate from the House of Representatives, which is also separate from, which should also be separate from the Senate. We also want an elected Senate. Right now, the Senate is appointed by the two-party leaders. So the two party leaders get together, not together, but they both get to, if you're the winning party, you appoint 13. If you're the losing party, you appoint the other 8. Geez. And this is supposed to be government for us. And all of our MPs are subservient to the prime minister from the winning side, because they all want to get a ministerial portfolio. So they better not screw up, because if they do, he won't give them a portfolio. And if he does give them one, he has full authority to dismiss them at will. So he's like a king, right? You know, he can dismiss you and I can appoint you. And then he leads the appointment of all the other agencies, really, and they stack it with their partisan activists, give them jobs and so on, you know, board positions and lots of taxpayers' money and meetings and traveling and food. So it's a really rich, corrupt system that we have here in Jamaica. So we want to do away with all of that. We want to have an elected president. We want to have an elected vice president, one from each of the counties. We want to have our MPs being persons who actually come from the communities that they're representing. So they need to be from the community, living in the community, experiencing the problems of the community, and they must come from the grassroots, meaning nominated and elected by the people of that community, not an outside force coming in to organize them. It must be from within, no outside funding. We want to have our senators be nominated and elected by each of the respective parishes. In Canada, you call that provinces, but it's much bigger in Canada. We have smaller groups, we call them parishes, 14 parishes here. So we want 14 senators from the parishes to be elected. So when we're finished, and then we also want to restrict the size of government. We want to restrict the tax base, so you can only charge 10% income tax. You cannot raise taxes. So the maximum tax is 10% of anybody's income. No other form of taxation except the sales tax, which is completely dedicated to a transitioning of those who have suffered bad governance for years, to bring them all out of that condition with proper housing and streets and so on, and fix that problem once and for all. And no more interference in the economy. So even if we're funding something, the government only can pay for it. They cannot run it. They cannot be in charge of it. They can only pay a private supplier for the good or service. And we separate public goods from private goods. So the government takes care of public goods, but never get involved in administering or running private goods whatsoever. That's for the market to run.
And it sounds like it's about as close to Libertopia as you're ever going to get, Joseph. I love the concept. I'm also a Swedish model fan.
Yes.
They have cantons in Sweden, or not Sweden, Switzerland, pardon me. The Swiss canton model says that the federal government can only charge a certain tax, which is for the army.
Yes.
Everything else has to be funded by the cantons. So when they want to spend, they have to put it out to the cantons, and it's put on a plebiscite. I'm a huge proponent of plebiscite.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, yes.
I think that that's a wonderful way for people to go. But I think that the Constitutional Republic of the United States is probably the closest to freedom that we've ever come in a governmental document.
Absolutely. And we want to improve on that, Keith. We've looked at the American system very closely, and others as well. And we believe, first and foremost, we have to codify in the Constitution and restrict the government to its proper role of protecting life, liberty, and property. That's number one. And then everything else is built on that. You don't go off that rail. And even we do have a social element to our plan, because Jamaica is in such a bad shape governance that people are just living in horrible conditions. So what we've done, we're going straight and by the way, culturally, the people here wants to contribute to helping getting rid of poverty. So they want to do it, and they will not accept a political party, believe it or not, that doesn't have a social element. So what we have done, we've created a model that says take for all the public goods and services, 10% income tax, full stop. You can go down, but you can't go up. That's the cap. We believe that the same way that you and I can't just raise our income when we want to spend more, the government should not be able to raise its income when it wants to spend more. It should have and so we're tying the government's income to the productivity of the nation. So 10% of $100 is $10. If by virtue of running a good government, meaning ensuring people are safe, the environment is clean and orderly, and people can go about their business productively, then by that way, the economy will grow. So if it now grows from $100 to $1,000, 10% of 1,000 is 100. So you've just, brought your income up significantly. But that's the only way you can raise it. Secondarily, we want to change the monetary system so the government cannot borrow at interest.
Yes.
So we're going to eliminate borrowing private money. There's no need for the government to borrow private money at interest. No need at all. So we're going to get rid of that policy. So again, you charge 10% of the income that your citizens produce. Now on the private goods and services side, we said, okay, no child should go to school hungry. So we want to make sure that if a child is born in this country, they're getting proper nutrition, they're getting proper education, and they're getting proper health care, and they live in a decent home. Because the child cannot provide for himself. But the parents, we're going to hold responsible. So the 10% sales tax that we charge, that tax now is for protecting the rights of children, the poor. Now, what this does, the parents who are able to pay full price, and by the way, we're eliminating public schools. It's only private schools. So the parents who can afford it pay full price. Those who can only pay half price, pay half price. And those who can pay less, pay less. And those who have no employment, this 10% we use to help them get into a program where they get to produce. They can join, for example, one of the public service sites like, forestry or road maintenance or whatever it is. So they get into a job, but they must participate in providing the funds for their children's education. If you have a child, you're responsible. So we don't call it free education. There's no free education. There's no free healthcare. There's no free housing or whatever. You work for what you want, but the government is going to make sure through this 10% and only this 10%, we create a buffer zone for the very poor to come up out of poverty. And by this, we shift everybody into the productive sector without giving you the false idea of free anything, because we're going to make it very clear, nothing is free. And you do not have a right or a claim on somebody else's income.
I think that's fantastic. I'm floating that idea here in Ontario too, as because we have so many social programs here. There's so many, and they're redundant, and they're overlapped, and there's so much waste in that. What I'm proposing here is what I call the Department of Disability Empowerment. Mm-hmm. And I see there's 3 disabilities in the world. There's mental, there's physical, but there's also economic disability.
Yes.
So, and often those 3 are tied to each other. So what I would like to do is I'd like to take all the programs that they have out here. I'd like to scrap all of them and set up this one department where you go and you see the person and you're either mentally disabled or you're physically disabled or you're economically disabled, and we work to get you back so that you're productive, because not everybody who's mentally disabled can't work. Not everybody who's physically disabled can't work. There's things that they can do. We can get them coding, or there's a million different things that we can do in society and get these people back, and have it community oriented, so that if your community, a lot of foresting going on, you're an able body, let's get you working in the forest industry, let's get you to be an arborist, let's train you. Let's get these people back to the point where they're contributing in society, and to take away this hopelessness, this generational hopelessness that we see developing, because it goes from one to the next to the next. The mother teaches the son that welfare, the son teaches his kids, and so on and so forth. We want to get rid of that victim mentality, and let's
call it workfare. Let's get rid of welfare.
Yes.
Workfare. How do we help people to get back to work? How do we create an environment that says, okay, as you're saying, I love what you're doing, by the way. I wrote it down here: mental, physical, economic disability. I like that. I think I'm going to borrow that.
You can.
So what we want to do is we want to make sure that people who have a disability, they get an opportunity to be as productive as they possibly can.
That's right. We empower them to be the best they can in society.
Within their capacity.
Not just for society, but for themselves.
Absolutely.
Because when you're not contributing, you start to feel worthless. This is something that people miss in this world, is that this hopelessness that has taken over.
And dependency, and victimhood, I'm a victim, and whatever. No, let's change that. And so in our model in the UIC here in Jamaica, we are going to put people to work. So if you're in a bad situation, you get a choice. You can stay in that situation if you want. We're not forcing anybody to do anything.
Right.
But as long as you have a child, because that's where we are focused. We've narrowed ours to focus more on what we like to call child rights, right? So when you're born as a child into this world, nobody expects you to be able to figure things out by yourself. As a baby, you can't figure out where to get your food, your clothes, your shelter. So children are a special case, right? They also have the right to life. They also have the right to liberty and the right to property, but that's an evolving right.
That's right.
And pay for any of this. But their parents are responsible, male and female. When I was a kid, when I was born, my father just, abdicated his responsibility, and he just left it to my mom, and it was her job to go figure it all out. She had to carry me for 9 months, and then she had to now come home and figure out how to feed this thing and clothe this thing and, nurture him to get to the stage where he's able to take care of himself. Now, in the Jamaica I was born in, my father got off the hook. Clean sweep. He didn't have to do anything for those. I found him afterwards and made him pay for some, but but before he was just off the hook. And so in the UIC government and the UIC model, nope. Once you are proven to be the father, and we're finding it, this is a government job. We're not waiting for the mother to finger you out, to say, I'm applying for child support. Once you are the biological father of any child, you are 50% responsible for the cost. So either you and the mom work it out, or we're going to step in and work it out, meaning you're going to be on the hook to pay for the schooling that the state has to provide your child to make sure he doesn't come out a bomb like you. Right? We want your child to be properly educated. We want your child to be properly nourished, because if our kids are not nourished, they can't learn properly, right? So proper nourishment. If they're sick, they need proper health care. And every child should live in a decent home. Not like me. I lived in this little box of 12 by 12 room, 4 of us in deplorable conditions, no indoor plumbing. So that's my experience. I don't think any child should have to go through that if it can be avoided. If you're born into a country where there's no hope, like you can born into this country where there's nothing, right? It's just what it is. But in a country like Canada or Jamaica, Canada is much better than Jamaica, but even in Jamaica, no child has to live the way I lived as a child. And so we're going to hold fathers accountable and mothers accountable to ensure that their children get a decent education, good nutrition, good healthcare, and good housing. And when that child grows up, they're in a position to be a great contributor to society and not a dependence
That's
of
right.
the state. Yeah.
Equity and opportunity. You're going to provide equity and opportunity to every.
Absolutely.
I love it. I think this is fantastic to hear. And it's nice that as libertarians, we're starting to see that there is a social, contract out there. People do expect us to do something, right?
Yes, yes.
And we're not going to walk away from statism in one fell swoop. It's
a transition. It's a transition.
That's right. We're going to have to incrementally walk way back to liberty from where we are today. And
absolutely,
we're going to have to provide on the way back, and we can't just pull the needle of government out of people's arms, because it will
absolutely. No, we have a social responsibility as a political movement to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be. Yes. Right? If where we need to be is a fully libertarian environment where the government sticks to its role and the citizen sticks to theirs. Okay. Yeah. And it's because of the social interaction between us, that we have charities and foundations and community groups that meet various community challenges, which is not the role of government. Unfortunately, we have been brainwashed away from that model, and more children and families are seeing government as the provider, as the God that is supposed to provide for them everything. Now we have to transition now. So the transition that we have built on this side of the world in the UIC is to say, and we're putting a limit on that, Keith. So we're only designating 10% sales tax to that. So the government cannot have an open-ended contract to solve social problems, because there's never enough, right? You can never, if you say, you can go off and solve every single social problem. Okay, fine. So we're gonna find $1 billion, 10 billion here, 50 billion. And where does it come from? It means you enslave people. So first, right now the UIC, we're going to take 10% of your income, from your direct income. So you file your taxes every year and make sure that your gross income, 10%. That's the government to provide public goods. Now, if we give the government an open-ended ticket to solve social problems, then that 10% will be like it is now. It will go to 20%,
Sure.
then it will go to 30%, then it will go to 40%, then it goes to 50%. Then where does it stop? It stops in socialism, where 100% of your income goes to the government, and now that affects many things. Because my dignity is gone. Why am I working hard anymore if when I work, 100% goes to the government? So I will drop I personally, if I was in a slavery situation, I would work to rule. I would only work just enough not to be killed.
That's right.
For them not to come and blow my brains out. So I'll just, I don't want to exert myself. And guess what? All the other slaves will do the same.
That's
and then they'll have to beat us. They'll have to slap us and say, work harder, and threaten us. I'm going to shoot you now if you don't. So this is where you're going in socialism, right? Because in socialism, everybody starts watching, how much can I get away with? The innovations are gone. Why am I going to get up as a farmer, right? I have one of my neighbors here. He runs a very nice big dairy farm. I live on a farm, by the way, 36 acres of farm out here in Jamaica. So one of my neighbors, he runs a dairy farm, really nice guy. And he gets up 3, 4 in the morning and comes down to his farm, and he has his staff, and they're making sure the milk is pumped at the right time and loaded at the right time for the truck to come and pick it up and go. If he was if 100% of his income or more, or some big number is being taken away, he will not do that anymore. You'll have milk shortage. So you'll have milk shortage, coming down, supply going down, price going up because the supply is dropping and the demand is still there. You'll have farmers stop farming. Why am I going to kill myself and go out into the soil and deal with all those weeds and plow the ground and all the problems? Gosh,
we're
I'm not
seeing
going to work this hard.
We're seeing some of that with these COVID measures right now in Canada.
Yes.
With the CERB, the CEP,
yes,
$1,000, $500 a week over a 4-week period. So you get a $2,000 check. Now, someone who's working in a meatpacking plant's getting between $18 and $20 an hour. They're only taking home $2,600, $2,700 a month. And if you tax them, they're only taking home $2,100, $2,200 a month. So they can sit at home and play video games for basically the same income that they're working. So now people are just like, yeah, I don't want to go to work. And you're causing supply chain issues through being, you're trying to help you out. So you cause the problem by forcing businesses closed. And then when you open them up again and you've offered this money, people no longer want to go back because they're used to sitting at home.
Exactly. Who doesn't want to spend more time with their family?
Of course.
Say if I can get free money without even realizing later on I'm going to be taxed like crazy to pay this money back, and it's going to destroy my society. But for now, I'm thinking just narrow. So here I'm getting this free money. I can stay home. I always wanted to be home to try to homeschool my kid or to just play with little Timmy some more or whatever. So they just don't get it. They don't understand how they create disincentives to work and how they create social problems with their so-called social fixes. Here in Jamaica, I publicly told the Prime Minister, do not lock down the economy. Tell us what's going on. Tell us what the problem is and what you think we should do to protect ourselves, and give us regular updates and allow us to use our God-given ability to think and reason and take good measures to protect ourselves, and keep informing us as you learn more, because what you thought yesterday might be different from what you now realize it is today. So let's leave the economy open. Tell people what they can do based on what you know now, how to protect themselves. So wash your hands, mask up, wear face shields if you want. Here are stuff you can do, okay? But please go to work and stay as productive as possible and keep the economy going so that you can feed your family and we're okay. Instead, in a country where we don't have the printing press like America and we don't have the borrowing capacity as Canada, they shut down the economy, destroyed the economy, thrown thousands of people out of work. People are now suffering and struggling, and kids are still home. The science tells us children could have been in school all this time. They took them out of school, and so our suicide rate among young people have gone up. Our domestic abuse rates have gone up. Our mental illness rate has gone up, and you're solving the problem. So the solution,
it only saves one life.
Exactly. If it only say okay, you want to save lives? Here's what we do. Stop the fraudulent monetary system so people can no longer have mortgages that are 20, 30 times their income.
That's right.
Yeah, that's how you save lives.
Fix the currency. So getting back to that, you would pull out of the IMF completely?
Yes. Oh, yeah, completely out of the IMF. Yeah.
Would you start with an old, like the Bank of Canada had between 34 and 74, where it's a government-run currency in the start, and then you would maybe remove some legal tender laws and allow someone, if they had some gold in the bank, they could open up their own bank and compete with the government currency?
We will remove all currency tender laws. There should be nothing should stop you from trading with your fellow man in whatever currency you're able to trade in. All we ask is that you pay into providing for the streets you're going to drive on, right? For the police service that you need and for the justice system that you need. But no legal tender laws. We don't need them. We will have a government currency because it's wise and smart to do that, especially, initially. But this currency is going to be tied entirely to production. So basically, the only way the currency grows is by productive loans. So you want to borrow money to do something productive, the currency can expand to match the productive capacity and contracts accordingly. So it will be demand and supply, formula driven, not personality driven, not who is elected prime minister or president, but formula driven. So it's outside the hands,
Maybe capped off at GDP growth.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, it's always capped at
3.6. Only inflate the currency 3.6 to match the growth of the GDP.
Exactly. So productivity, it has to be based on productivity, and so it's matched with the production of the people. If the people aren't producing, then it can't go up. It can't grow, and the government cannot borrow at interest from anyone for anything. And capital expenditures has to be voted by the public. So it has to be when you're doing major capital expenditures, which you're going to borrow money for that purpose, because whatever you state the case, and it has to be voted in the regular elections in a referendum, and the people vote for that, and it must be only so large that it can be paid off in one generation.
Wonderful.
So you cannot carry it over to the next. So the generation today, you're going to pay the price of that tax decision.
Voted for it, you're going to pay for it.
Exactly. It doesn't go to your children.
So what do you got? What are you guys looking like in the elections? What's your percentage? What do you see coming down the pipe? Are you?
So right now we are we're gaining traction because more and more people are beginning to doubt the 75-year-old system. So we're building slowly. The difficulty we're having right now is communication, because we don't have the funds to buy the airwaves. But we have a strategy for that. We are building our social media, what do you call it now? Conversion ratio. That's building solidly. And we have a beautiful, you met him, Devon, who is really managing and leading our marketing strategy right now. So he's building that out. And hopefully we'll be able to make a big dent in the population. We do expect, miraculously, we do expect to at least win anywhere from 30 to 35 seats in the next election.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Can't wait. You might have a expatriate Canadian come and move to Jamaica.
Listen, my plan, Keith, is to make Jamaica the freest, safest, cleanest, most orderly country in the world. So everybody will want to move here.
I can't. Joseph, absolutely fantastic conversation, and we have to do this again because
Sure.
I love talking to you, and our ideas are very similar with what's going on. But we're already an hour in, and I try to keep these to an hour because the attention span of the world is less than it used to be, and it's hard to keep people focused for any longer than that hour. Even at the hour, people are like, Keith, you got to cut this down. You got to shorten.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, it's the way it is. So I fully understand, and I thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to another chat. It's a pleasure to know that there are people around the world who still believe in freedom.
I agree. And it's nice to network us. And the more that we connect, the better and stronger we're going to be. So I look forward to doing what I can to help you guys out. And I know you'll do the same for us up here.
Absolutely. You have my full support. Thank you.
And mine for you too.